Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and today I have an exciting training for you where we're going to take you on how to create a guided tour in Excel. So stay tuned, it's going to be a fantastic training. Alrighty, let's get started here. This workbook starting out with just 2 pages. We've got customers and payments here. And basically the idea of what I want to do is I want to create a walkthrough or a guided tour that gives the users who open the workbook, who run the tour, the chance to go through some of the features of the workbook. And this could be extremely helpful if you hand out your workbooks to friends, coworkers, bosses, or customers, and you kind of want to give them the ability to understand the features, benefits, or the options of a workbook. You can bring them through a guided tour, and this is pretty common throughout applications, but I wanted to bring this into Excel for you today and show you how it's done. All right, so what we have here is basically just a button. All I've done is created a shape and then put a little icon here. There's nothing attached to it as of yet. But what I want to do is I want to title this, and I could easily title this, give it a name. Let's clear out that cell association for now, and we can edit the text simply in this case just by clicking on it and then typing in it, which we can do. But what I want to do is I want to I want this to change. At some points I want to say take a tour, and if they've taken the tour or they're partially through the tour and haven't completed it, I want it to say continue your tour. So what I want to do is I want this to be a dynamic text, and we can do that if it's based on a cell. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll base it off of, let's go ahead and say A5. I want to track the tour numbers in A4, and so I'll take care of the naming in A5. All right, so let's go ahead and just say take a tour. And now all we have to do is assign that button, that cell, simply by equals and then clicking there. Okay, and let's go ahead and update the looks of that button with white, and then we'll go ahead and increase that font just a little bit. Okay, very good. So now we've got take a tour. So, but what I want to do is I want this to track the tour number that we're on. This way, if we're tracking the tour, the number of the tour, if we go from 1, 2, 3, no matter how many we have, we always know. This way, if the user decides to leave the tour and then they want to resume, we can always resume at the number they've left off. So what I want to do is, if this is 1, right, I want this to say take a tour. But if it's anything other than this, I want it to say resume tour. So we can do that with just a simple if-then statement. Equals if A4 equals 1, then take a tour. Okay. Otherwise, resume tour. Okay. This way, the button text will change based on the tour number that it's on. Okay. All right. So there. So now when this goes to 2 or anything else, it's going to say resume tour, and then the button text changes as well. We can go ahead and increase this a little bit. And then we can also group this button by holding the control down, clicking both, and clicking we have a shortcut to group. If you don't have that shortcut, you might want to add it into using the quick access, which is very, very helpful under more commands. Also, but for now, we'll go ahead and add it through our format and group, and then group here. Okay, so now we've grouped that, and I like to always title my buttons, so we'll just call this take tour button. Okay, now we've labeled that button so we know what it is, and the idea is basically now we can go ahead and let's reduce this for now, and the idea is that I want to darken the rest of the screen and highlight a particular area or the cell that we're on so that we can guide the user to a specific point. We can do that through some shapes. So let's go ahead and insert a shape, and we'll just go ahead and enter a square. Okay. I'll remove the border on this. I don't need any border or outline on this, so no outline. And I'm going to give it a color of black. Let's go ahead and set this down for now so we can see what's going on. And we'll set the shape fill to black. But I don't want it black. Obviously, I want it somewhat transparent. So let's go ahead and go to more fill colors. And here we can set the transparency and maybe something around 60%, okay? And what that's going to do is going to be able to see through it, but we'll also be able to highlight that. And really the idea is I want to surround that whatever part, whatever table, or whatever cell with 4 of these boxes. So let's say we're going to highlight customer name, okay? We can duplicate this. Control D will duplicate it. And I want to go over here, and then I'm going to move this shape up here, okay? And I want to do it one more time. Control D. All right, and then let's go ahead and create a smaller one here. Okay, and then let's go ahead and do one more, Control D, and we're going to put that here. Okay, and let's go ahead and extend this to the size of the screen. Let's just do it to the edge of the column M. And we'll go ahead and move this up, zoom in a little bit so we can get that middle point of reference, which is here. And we'll also extend that out to M if we can. All right, as well as move that up, get everything lined up. There's still a little bit of a gap there, so move it up one more. Okay, that looks good. If there's an overlap, right, it's going to look not so pretty, right? So we don't want any overlap and we don't want any gap. So we'll just set it up like that. And we'll do the same thing with the one below it. There we go. Okay. And one more. Okay, so basically I'm just using the up and down arrow keys to move up and down. And then we'll go ahead and extend this one. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a specific point of reference that we can refer to when we're dealing with one cell, so we can highlight that area. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and create some shape that will allow us to give some text. And so we'll use a call out for that, and I'll go ahead and use this rounded rectangle call out here in shapes. And I'll give it a contrasting color, let's say green, okay. Then we'll point the reference to the cell here, and we'll go ahead and give it some text. So let's say enter customer name here. Okay, that's good. And let's go ahead and center that. And we'll increase the, actually I'm going to keep it at the top because I want to put the buttons below, and then we'll just increase the font. That's pretty good. It's kind of big, but it's okay. It's really obvious. And change the font, we'll change the font color to dark green here so it's consistent with the theme. Maybe change the font a little bit to Cambria, something a little more stylish. Bold. That's too much. That's not going to look good. Okay, let's go ahead and put in some buttons now. I want 2 buttons. I want one to give the user the option to continue the tour, and I want another one for the option to quit the tour. So we'll go ahead and insert 2 buttons here, and we'll use these shape, the rounded rectangle shape, and put that right about here. And let's go ahead and format, and we'll give it that. And okay, continue, or let's just call it next. That'll be fine. And let's go ahead and center that. All right, that's nice, a little big. Next, and make that bold. Increase the font size a little bit. Okay, so that looks good. And all we have to do is just duplicate that, Control D again, and we'll use that for quit tour. Okay, bring that out a little bit. Okay, all right, that looks good. Let's make the buttons the same size so everything's and let's say the width of this one is 0.91, so let's go ahead and make this also 0.91. Okay, line them up, control in, control down, and align the middles there. We'll bring that to the center of the shape. Okay. All right, that font's a little bit big, huh? Isn't it? Go ahead and reduce that font a little bit so we have some more space. not all of it. Let's go ahead. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Now we'll raise this. Now what I want to do is I want to let the user know where we are in the group of tours. Like, are you at the first or at the last? So that, you know, that's pretty common within tours. We can do that with some circles. Let's go ahead and insert the shape. Okay, and we're going to enter our oval here, but we'll make it a circle. And we'll do that. And let's go ahead and set that size at perfectly round, 0.2, 0.2. That should be good. It's kind of big, but okay. Everything's big today. So let's use the theme colors, and we'll use that, and then we're going to duplicate that. This particular tour, I'm going to, for sample, we're going to create four different tour stops on the tour, shall we say. So let's go ahead and create 4 circles there. Okay, we'll go ahead and line those up. And control, holding down control, selecting them all. First we'll align them in the middle, and then we're going to distribute them horizontally. And then we're going to move them over here, right in about in the center. Okay, that looks good. Now this particular is tour number 1, so let's color number 1 differently. Okay, we'll give it there. All right, that's consistent with our theme. Okay, so they know they're on tour number 1. And that's pretty much it. Now we're just going to assign the macros. What I want to do is I want to duplicate this entire tour, but I want to assign the macros first. Okay, so let's go ahead at this point and create those macros. All right, into the VBA model we go. In the Developers tab, Visual Basic here. Alt F11 to get there. If you don't have the Developers tab available, you can get to it simply with the options here under the File menu, and then go ahead and click in the Customize ribbon. You can see the developers right here. To get there, you check that and it'll be found. All right, so into Visual Basic we go. We don't have any macros, so we're good. We just have 2 sheets. Let's go ahead and create a module. Right click anywhere, insert module. Okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to always name our module. When we have lots of modules, we want to be able to tell the difference, so clicking on the properties will get us that, and then we'll just go ahead and call this tour macros. Just want to remind you also that the name of your module should never be the same name as a subroutine. Okay, we want to keep those different and separate, otherwise it'll create havoc for you. You don't want that. We can close the properties now, we don't need that. And we really only need to create 2 macros. So we can do this all with just 2 macros. We'll do one as next, create one macro called next tour and one macro called quit tour. So let's go ahead and start out with sub next tour. Okay. And what we want to do is we always want to keep track of the tour number. We want to know what tour number we're on. So let's dimension that. Dim tour number as long. Okay. For the most part, we'll be working in sheet 1. That's where we're going to track our tour number. So let's go ahead and just put that in with a with statement so that we don't have to define that with sheet 1. Okay. And the first thing we want to do is we want to get that sheet number. We need to know what tour number we are on. So if you'll remember, we're going to track our tour number here in it was A4. A4 is going to be tracking our tour number. So let's go ahead and set that up. All right. Tour num equals dot. Remember, we can use dot because we've already defined sheet. We don't need sheet 1, right? Dot range because we have with sheet 1. So we can start out with dot range. Okay. A4. Dot value. Okay. And that's going to, we'll set the tour number, set tour number. This is going to be a really easy macro. Okay. And now we're going to be creating pretty much four different tours. Okay. So I want to make sure that if we're on the last one, we're going to do something different, right? So basically, if we get to the last tour number, right, then and I guess it would increase, each one will increase the tour number. So if the tour number is 5, in fact, this number is going to keep track. This number is going to go up and up and up as we go through the tour. So if this number's, we're going to create 4 tours. So if this number is 5, we need to go back and reset it. So we're going to write some code to do that right now. All right, back into the VBA module. So what I want to say is that if dot range A4, or we can just use, if we can do tour number, we've already defined it, tour number is less than 5, then do something, okay? Then do something, else do something else, okay? So we've defined that, we've partitioned that out. If it's less than 5, we're going to continue with the tour, and if it's, 5 or greater, we're basically going to reset the counter to number 1, right? And then cancel that. So that's what we want to do. So we're going to say basically, and also in this particular tour, what I'm going to do is I want to divide it. I want 2 tour stops on this sheet, and I want 2 on this one, okay? 2 on the payments and 2 on the customers. So what I want to make sure to do is if the tour number, if we're on tour number 3, we need to make sure that we activate this sheet as well. So as they click next, right, if the next one is on payments, we need to activate the payment screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that with the VB. So we want to write some code that's saying if the tour number is greater than 2, because that means tours 3 and 4 will be on the payment sheet. So tour is greater. Then all we want to do is sheet 2 dot activate. And remember, we have to call out sheet 2 because we're only working with sheet 1, right? So if we're going to work with another specific sheet, then we do need to call it out. So we'll call it out here, sheet 2 activate. And that's just basically going to say, okay, then that's fine. Then it's activated. And now what we need to do is we need to write additional code that says, okay, active sheet, so whatever active sheet you're on, shapes, okay, and shape. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a shape. I'm going to combine all this into a group. Let's do that now. We'll reduce it so you can see it. And let's go ahead and lower this so we cover the entire sheet as much as we can. And all right, that's good. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to combine all of these shapes, and I want to create basically create a tour, group them, okay? So we're going to click on this one, we're going to hold the control, click on this one, okay, and the last one, which is right here, okay? So that's 4, as well as the call out, as well as the button, and the 4 shapes, okay? And then, so that's it, right? So that's everything is part of this particular tour. We have the 4 colors background, we have the call out, the 2 buttons, and then the 4 guided tours. So we're going to just group them, and then we're going to give them a name, okay? Tour 1, okay? So that's tour 1. And if we go into shapes under, I've got it on a quick set here, a selection pane, but you can get it by going over to the page layout and then clicking selection pane, okay? And here we have our tour 1. Okay, all the shapes that are part of it. So if we unclick it, now it's going to be gone, and then we click it again, it'll be displayed. So for now, we can just hide it. So basically what I want to do is I want to do that for each one, okay? But before I do that, I want to assign those macros to that so that when we duplicate it, the macros are already assigned. And one important thing is when we increase or decrease the column widths, I don't want that shape to also increase. I want the shape not to change. So important thing is, let's go back into the selection pane, and we'll click on that, and then right click, go to properties. Okay, we also want to make sure that in the properties that we've moved but don't size with cells. You would just check this with every shape. We don't want the size to change, okay, because that placement is perfectly over the area that we want. Okay, we can move with the cells. That's important because if we move that, right, if we move it, great, it moves as well. If we move column A, right, it moves there, okay? So keep in mind that when you move certain cells, we may want to move it or place it, but we definitely don't want it to change the size with the cells. We don't want this getting smaller or bigger. We want the size to stay the same. So that's important to keep in mind, that we want do not change the size with the cells. All right, so we want to check that each time, go into properties under there. And don't worry about until you've grouped them. And once you group them, you will have to set that. So that's important. You want to make sure that that's consistent throughout each of your groups in that case. So now that we've got the tour, so now we know each one of our shapes is going to be named tour 1, tour 2, tour 3. So that means the 1 becomes the variable. So it's very easy to use one macro with them all, because we've named the shapes the same as the tour numbers. So when we go back into our VBA, okay, and we go through active shapes, all we have to do is name that shape with the same numbers. So in this case, active sheet shapes tour, okay, tour, and okay, tour number. But actually the tour number is going to be the next one, right? So in other words, we're always going to be on the next one. So in this case, tour number -1, and that helps us keep track, okay? So, but that's going to show tour number -1 because we will have already added 1 in that case. So we want to make sure that's visible, okay? All right, so we want to make sure that that's visible, and that's only if it does not equal 1. So if the tour number does not equal 1, okay? And what we want to do is we want to, before we show the new one, we want to hide the old one, right? So we're going to do that with this line. If the tour number, if you're on 1, there is no old tour. But if you're on 2, first we want to hide tour 1, then we want to show tour 2. So if tour number does not equal 1, then active tour, then the old one, visible, equals false, okay? So that means hide the old one first. Let's see, hide previous, O-U-S-I-O, nice spelling, O-U-S, there we go, tour, okay? Hide first. Then active sheet tour is false, okay? So we just want to set that, okay? And the next line is we are going to make the new one visible. Active sheet dot shapes tour and tour number, okay, dot visible equals true. So we've hidden the old one, unless we're on 1, visible equals true, or MSO true, MSO C true, okay. Now we've set that one to be true. So hide the old one unless you're on number 1, and then make the whichever tour number visible. So that's pretty much it. And now the next thing we always have to do is just set the next, get ready for the next tour number. So dot range A4 dot value equals the tour number plus 1 more. So we're going to set up for the next tour number, okay? And now you remember, we've said basically if the tour number is less than 5, do this, okay? So we're going to be doing all of these things. All of these things if the tour number is not. But what if it is 5? If it is 5, well, we want to reset the tour number to 1 because there is going to be no 5. In other words, we're going to have only 4 tour stops, so we want to reset it. So let's do that now. Dot range A4 dot value equals 1, and that resets at the end of the tour. Okay. And we also want to make sure we hide the previous, if let's say we're on tour number 5, we also want to make sure we hide tour number 4, okay? And I've put this, I'm not going to put 4 because in yours you may have 10 tours. So let's just keep it as a variable and not write 4, right? So active sheet again, shapes, tour, and the tour number. Remember, we're already on 5, so the last tour number was 5 minus 1. Okay. Dot visible equals MSO false. Okay. And this basically just whatever the last tour that's shown, this basically hides it. So if you're on tour number 10, right, and now this is going to say, okay, tour number 9, hide it. So this simply just hides the last tour number. All right, and there's a few instances where if you're switching sheets, it might not find it. So I usually like to put an error stop in here in this one. If you're switching sheets, it may not see it. So we can do on error go to 0. Okay. And then we could do, or actually, well, let's do on error go to 0 after, and we'll do on error resume next here. on error, resume next. Okay, so we'll put that in there just in case there's no specific tour on that page, then it skips that. Okay, but we don't want to run this code yet, right? Because we've only set up one tour, so we want to make sure that we create all of the tours before actually running this code. But I want to create these because I want to assign them. And then the other macro is very, very simple, and that's the quit tour. Sub quit tour, okay. And then we'll just make this active sheet shapes, okay. We're going to do active shapes tour. And since we haven't defined tour number here in this macro, we haven't defined it yet. So let's just go ahead and write in sheet, because it takes more lines of code to define the sheet number, but we can get around that. In this case, it's only one line of code. So it's sheet1.range A4, okay, dot value -1 dot visible equals MSO false. Okay, and remember, again, why do we use -1? Because this is tracking our next tour number, our next one, right? So -1 is the current tour number. So that's why we want to hide it. So this keeps track of our next tour number. So we want to hide the previous one. That's why we're using -1. That's it for the quit tour. Okay, let's go ahead and save it. I always like to save before I run any code, because oftentimes, I mess things up and then crash my computer. No, crash Excel or some things happen. It's always nice if you do something incorrect or you clear something by mistake, you can just close it without saving it if you saved it before running the code. So that's always a good common practice. Okay, so let's go ahead and duplicate this tour 1, and but we want to create tour 2. So it's very easy in this case. We're just going to do, we've already selected it here. Okay, so we can do Control D. And now we've got 2 tours showing. I don't want 2 tours showing, I just want 1. So go back into the selection pane, and I'm going to hide tour 1 and focus just on tour 2. They're both called tour 1 right now, so it's very important to rename it. You see, we have 2 tour 1s, okay? So we want to call this one. There's 2 ways to rename it. You can do it right here, okay? Or you can do it through here, okay? Tour 2. This is going to be our tour 2, okay? Now we have tour 1 and tour 2. So let's go ahead and place tour 2. We'll close this out. And I'll place it on the address here. So let's go ahead and move these first. And all we have to do is drag these over here. Okay. And drag this one over to the end here. All right. Good. And that's pretty much it. That's going to be easy for that one. So now let's go ahead and drag this over using the control button down. Control, holding that control, moving that over. All right. And what we want to do is, since this is the second stop in our tour, okay, let's go ahead and use that one. So let's go ahead and mark that one as the active one. We can do that with format. And go ahead and mark that here. And then we'll go ahead and mark this one as, let's just say inactive, since we're not on that one. Give it that inactive color. Let's go down so you can see it a little bit easier to work with. Okay, great. So now all we need to do is rename the text, enter address here. That's it. So it's very super simple. I did forget to assign the macros on the last one. So let's go ahead and do that now. Right click, and then assign macro. If you do it in the first step, you don't have to keep doing it. You don't have to do it twice. Next tour, okay. Click, and then here, right click, assign macro, quit tour, okay. Let's go ahead and do that with 1 since I forgot, and go ahead and back into the shapes here. Okay, let's hide tour 2, show tour 1, do the same thing here. All right. And let's go ahead and right click and assign macro. Next tour, okay, and quit tour, same thing. All right, now we've gotten those assigned. So now when we duplicate it, we'll also be duplicating the macros, which is a nice. All right, let's go ahead and replace this one so that it shows up in the right place here. And we can fine tune it with the up-down keys. Perfect. Okay, good. So now we've got 2. So let's go ahead and create the other 3. We're going to copy this, Control C. All right. Go into the payments screen here, and then Control V. Okay. We'll move it up. Move it up. And of course we want to rename this. That's the first thing we want to do. And this is tour number 3. So once we place it, now let's go ahead and set this to tour 3. Okay, great. And again, same thing here. Let's go ahead and set that, the formatting on that, so we can place that in the middle. It's super simple at this point. And reset that back to the inactive. And let's go ahead and let's call this payment date, since we're very close to there already. Move this up. It's a little bit time consuming, but once you get it, it doesn't take too long to create these. Obviously, it's not the most ideal situation, but we're working with Excel here, so we'll make the best of what we have. And in this case, let's go ahead and set the payment date, and then move this one up. And move this one up a little bit so there's no gap. Okay, that looks pretty good. Nope, still one little bit of a small gap there. Let's close that up. Good. And the last one, this shape here, we'll move that right about here. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. Okay, good. So we're set on that, and now let's go ahead and enter the payment date. The text is enter payment date. Okay. Enter the payment date here. All right, now we got that on separate lines. So that's pretty good. And all right, and now we're good. Now all we have to do is create the 4th thing. We want to just make sure we've selected the entire tour, so we can do it from here. It's easier. We could also zoom out, all right, and do that here. And let's go ahead and zoom in, back in, and now we'll go ahead and create tour number 4. Select it, Control D. All right, now we have 2 tour number 3s. Let's hide this one, okay, so we don't see that one, and just focus on this one here. This is tour 4. Okay, great. So now we have tour 3, tour 4. Now how about this one for the payment type? Okay, enter payment type. Okay, we'll use this for payment type, and this is the last one, so we can mark this as the last here. And we'll go ahead and there we go. We're set there. Now let's just go ahead and reset the positioning, holding the Control down, selecting all the shapes that we want to move over here, and then we can unclick that and bring that over here. Good. So we've got the payment type, and the macros are already assigned. You can see that. All right, let's go ahead and move our positioning over. We'll work from left to right, and bring this, zoom in so we can see that 3rd position here. All right, reduce the overlap and zoom out so we can see what we're doing with this to make it look a little bit better. And we're working within a group, so we want to double click that. If we just click here, we're working within a group, so we want to double click on the actual, since we're not ungrouping and regrouping. Remember, if you do ungroup, okay, if you do ungroup, make sure you reset those properties, okay? Make sure you reset those properties to move but don't size. It should always be there. Something you want to check, because otherwise it gets kind of messed up. You don't want that. Let's move this up a little bit and then extend it all the way to the payment type. So we're just focused on that field there. And let's go ahead and set it right there. Okay. Reduce the overlap. Reduce the overlap. All right, good. And bring this down a little bit. All right. All right, good. Let's go ahead and make the width of these two exactly the same. Let's see, I want to match this width. So this width is 0.23. So we'll click on that. Set them both the same. Okay. That way we can have even. And we can also reset. We can use the tops, right? Align the top so they're always at the top. That's another quick way. You see a gap there, no gap. Perfect. Bring this down. Bring that up. So it takes a little bit of monkeying with a little bit, but it's pretty quick. Okay, so it looks good now. All right, we can remove that. All right. All right, good. Okay, so we have all four tours there. So For now, we can we don't want to view the, let's go ahead and start out from the beginning. All right, moving over back to the customer screen, our original screen, and let's go ahead and close the selection shapes there. All we have to do is assign a macro now to our main Take a Tour button. You could theoretically put this on both sheets as well, or you could put it on every sheet in your workbook, and as long as it refers to one sheet, it'll either say take a tour or resume tour. So if I've already probably put this on every single sheet, you know, it's kind of nice. And so let's go ahead and assign this as our next tour. Okay, and let's give it a try. We're set on number 1, which is what we want to be, and let's go ahead and click that, and it shows up on our next. And let's just go ahead and quit the tour. Now we want the next one, we want it to show up, right? We know our next tour number's 2, right? So when we resume it, it goes right to 2, actually. So it goes right to 2. Quit tour again, and it should go right to 3. Okay, see? And next. So that's it. All right. I made a few small modifications in the code just for help. Let's go ahead and go over those slight modifications. Basically, what I did was if the tour number is not 1, we're just going to take the active sheet and we're going to make it false first. Before we go to the sheet 2 activate, we want to make sure that first we hide the current tour. Then, if necessary, we activate the next sheet, and then we show the current tour. So that'll be a little more helpful, and that'll catch all the errors. And that's pretty much it. It's a quick way to done it. I've done this in a couple of my programs, and so it's really helpful, and it gives a great way to show users how to go through applications, go through your Excel and learn about it without actually having to figure it out for themselves. So I hope you have found this helpful. Of course, as always, I'll include this application so you can download it and take a look and try it out for yourself. I'd love to see what you can make of it. Please don't forget to share this as much as you can and like the video. Your comments is always appreciated. I'll make sure to put the download in the file for you so you can get to it. Thank you very much.